My creator had left me, and in my anger and unhappiness, I cursed him. I decided to introduce myself to the people in the cottage when the time was right. Months passed. Then one day, when the old man was alone, I knocked on the door of the cottage. Who's there? Come in. Pardon me. I'm a traveler and I need a little rest. Could I sit for a few minutes by the fire? Come in, but I can't offer you any food because I'm blind. I have food. I only need warmth and rest. I'm an unfortunate creature. I have no relation or friend in the world. I'm now going to claim the protection of some friends. These good people have never seen me. If I fail with them, no one will ever be my friends. If these friends are good and kind, there's no need to lose hope. They are kind, but where they should see a kind friend, they only see a monster. I have shown them kindness, but they believe that I want to injure them. Where do they live? Near here. Perhaps I can help. What are the names of those friends? At that moment I heard the steps of the younger people. Now is the time. Save and protect me. You and your family are the friends I'm looking for. Great God, who are you? I cannot describe their horror when they saw me. Agatha fainted and Safi ran away. Felix tore me from his father. He threw me to the ground and hit me with a stick. Full of pain and sadness, I escaped to my hut. They didn't see where I went. Volume 2, Chapter 8. The family left the cottage. That night, in my anger, I lit a dry branch and the cottage was soon on fire. And now where should I go? I knew from your papers that you were my creator. I knew you were from Geneva, so I decided to go there. My travels were long and my sufferings were great. I usually rested during the day and traveled at night. However, one morning I found that my path went through a deep forest. I decided to continue walking after sunrise. It was a beautiful spring day and I felt happy. I heard the sound of voices, so I hid. A young girl ran along the bank of the river. Suddenly her foot slipped and she fell into the river. I rushed from my hiding place and with great difficulty pulled her out of the water. I tried to bring her back to life. Suddenly a man came toward me. He tore the girl from my arms and ran back into the forest. I followed him. I didn't really know why. When he saw me, he aimed a gun at me and fired. I fell to the ground and the man escaped into the forest. I had saved someone's life, and as a reward, I had received a dreadful wound. The great pain, I promised that in the future I would only hate people and injure them. In great pain, I promised that in the future I would only hate people and injure them. After a few weeks, my wound was better and I continued my journey. I didn't find pleasure in anything. I just felt extremely unhappy. After 2 months, I arrived near Geneva. I hid myself in some fields. I was tired and hungry. I fell into a light sleep. But a beautiful child woke me up. He ran up to my hiding place. I thought that he was too young to hate me. Ah! If I could teach him to be my friend, I wouldn't be so lonely. Child, I'm not going to hurt you. Listen to me. Let me go. Monster. You want to eat me and tear me to pieces. Let me go or I'll tell my father. Boy, you will never see your father again. You must come with me. Monster, let me go. My father is Monsieur Frankenstein. He'll punish you if you keep me. Frankenstein, you belong to my enemy. You'll be my first victim. The child still struggled and shouted. I took hold of his throat to make him stop, and in a moment he lay dead at my feet. I too can create sorrow. This death will make my enemy miserable and destroy him. I saw something the child was wearing. It was a picture of a lovely woman. I remembered that such beautiful creatures could never bring me happiness. I went to find a hiding place and entered a barn. A young woman was sleeping there. She was lovely. She was one of those who would never smile at me. Wake up. Your lover is near. Someone who would die to have one look of kindness from you. She moved a little and I was terrified. If she woke up, would she say that I was the murderer? I decided that not I, but she should suffer. I murdered the child because I would never have this woman's kindness, so she should pay for the murder. I put the picture in her pocket. She moved again and I ran away. For days I stayed near the place where I had murdered the child. Then I came to these mountains. There is something I want and only you can give it to me. You must promise to do as I ask. I am alone and miserable. People hate me. You must create a woman who is as ugly as I am. She will not run away from me. You must create this woman. Volume 2, Chapter 9. Only you can do this. You must not refuse. No. Should I create another creature like yourself who will hurt people? I'll never agree to it. I am dangerous because I am miserable. What I am asking for is reasonable. Do not refuse. Although I felt afraid, I saw the truth in what he said. If you agree, neither you nor anyone else will ever see us again. We'll sleep on dried leaves and eat nuts and fruit. We'll live peacefully. How can you live in wild places without people? You want people's love and you'll return and to find it. They will hate you and then you'll want to kill again. I promise you that I won't. Why should I trust you? The love of another being will remove the cause of my crimes. I'll do it if you agree to leave Europe forever and never visit an area where people live. I promise that if you give me this, you'll never see me again. Go home and start your work. I will watch your progress. When you're ready, I'll appear. He went down the mountain extremely quickly and disappeared. With a heavy heart, I went down toward the valley. I returned to my family in Geneva. They were worried by my wild appearance. I said very little to them, although I loved them so much. Volume 3, Chapter 1. Weeks passed and I could not start my work. I was afraid of the monster, but I hated the task too much. It began to seem less necessary to do it. My health was much better when I didn't think about my promise. I felt happy. I'm happy to see you better, my son, but you're still unhappy. You still avoid us. Yesterday I had an idea about what might be the cause of this. I have always looked forward to your marriage to Elizabeth, but perhaps you think of her as a sister or you love someone else. My dear father, I love Elizabeth and want to marry her. If you feel that way, then we will certainly be happy. Tell me, would you dislike an immediate marriage? For some time I could not reply to my father. The idea of an immediate marriage filled me with horror. I hadn't done what I had promised the monster. I didn't dare break my promise. First the monster had to leave with his mate, then I could enjoy the happiness of marriage and peace. I remember that I needed to go to England. I had to get new information for my task. Also, I had to be away from those I loved while I worked. I persuaded my father to agree to the trip. He hoped it would be good for me. I could go for a few months or even a year. He asked Clerval to go with me. I needed to be alone to work, but if Clerval was with me, I wouldn't have hours for lonely thought, and he might even stop the monster from visiting me. We planned that Elizabeth and I would marry when I returned. For me, this was my reward for completing the task I hated. I was afraid of leaving my family. My enemy could attack them while I was away. But he had promised to follow me everywhere, so would he not come to England? Volume 3, Chapter 2. We decided to stay in London for a few months. It was a wonderful city, but I couldn't enjoy it. A dark cloud hung over me. This is living. Clerval wanted to meet men who were clever and full of new ideas. This was not important to me. My aim was to get the information I needed for my task. I took my letters of introduction to the most famous natural scientists. I visited these people only for the information they could give me. I felt despair when I was with other people. I wasn't like them. Clerval was how I had been in the past. He wanted to learn and do new things. He was also working towards achieving something he had wanted for a long time. He wanted to go to India so that he could become a trader there. He was always busy. I often refused to go places with him so that I could be alone. I began to collect the materials that I needed for my new creation. I hated doing it. After a few months in London, we received an invitation from a friend in the north of Scotland. I didn't like being with people, but I wanted very much to see mountains and streams again. We accepted the invitation. On the way to Edinburgh, we visited Windsor, Oxford, Matlock, and the Cumberland Lakes. I took my equipment and materials so that I could finish my work in the north of Scotland. Henry loved the beauty of Edinburgh, but I wanted to finish the journey. Sometimes I thought the monster had followed me. I was afraid he would kill Henry because I wasn't working fast enough. After a week, we left Edinburgh and traveled on to Perth, but I didn't want to be with strangers or to be a guest in someone's house. Henry, I want to travel around Scotland alone. Enjoy your stay there, and I'll meet you here in a month or two. Let me be alone for a short time. When I return, I'll be happier, I hope. I'd rather be with you than with these people that I don't know. I've decided to do this. Then hurry back, my dear friend. I wanted to find a place that was very far from everything. I chose a small rocky island in the Orkneys. Only 5 people and a few cows lived there. I lived in a small hut. I worked during the day, and in the evening I walked along the stony beach to listen to the waves as they crashed at my feet. As the days passed, I began to hate my work more and more. Sometimes I couldn't do it at all, and at other times I worked day and night. I became restless and nervous. The whole time I was afraid of meeting the monster. When I worked on my first experiment, I felt excited. This time I felt sick. Volume 3, Chapter 3. One evening I began to think about what I was doing. 3 years earlier, I had created a monster who had done dreadful things. And now I was making another creature. I didn't know what she would do. Perhaps she would be worse than her mate and kill for pleasure. He had promised to live far away from everyone, but she had not made that promise. Perhaps she would refuse to. Perhaps they would hate each other. He might think she was ugly. She might turn away from him. She might leave him and make him more miserable. Or they could have children who might be dangerous. But for the first time, I realized what I had done. I'd brought my own peace at the price, perhaps, of the existence of the whole human race. Suddenly, yes, he had followed me. Now he had come to claim what I had promised him. His face was full of evil. I felt crazy when I thought of my promise to create another monster like him. The monster watched in horror as I destroyed the only creature that could bring him happiness. He gave a cry of despair and revenge and disappeared. I promised myself that I would never work on this task again. Several hours passed. Then I heard the sound of a boat. Somebody landed near my house. You have destroyed your work. Do you intend to break your promise to me? Do you dare destroy my hope? Yes, I will break my promise. I will never create another creature like you again. Remember that I have power. You are my creator, but I am your master. Obey. Your threats show me that I've made the right decision. Go away. Am I going to be alone even though all other men and animals have their mates? Are you going to be happy while I am miserable? I will have my revenge. You will be sorry for the injuries you have given me. I'll go, but remember, I will be with you on your wedding night. Monster, before you kill me, be sure of your own safety. He disappeared in his boat and everything was silent again. I thought again of his words, I will be with you on your wedding night. That was going to be the day of my death. I did not feel afraid. I felt sorry for Elizabeth. I decided not to die without a fight. The next day I received a letter from Clerval. He asked me to join him again. The letter brought me back to real life and I decided to leave the island. I packed up my equipment and the parts of the unfinished creature. Very early the next morning, I sailed out and threw them into the sea. The air was so pure that I decided to stay longer in the water. Eventually, clouds hid the moon and everything was dark, and I heard only the sound of the boat. In a short time, I fell asleep. When I woke up, the sun was quite high in the sky. The wind was high too, and the waves were threatening the safety of my boat. The wind had driven me a long way from the coast. When I tried to change direction, water quickly filled the boat. I could only sail with the wind behind me. I looked at the sea. It was going to be my grave. Monster, you've got what you wanted. Some hours passed in this way, but slowly the wind became gentler and the sea became calmer. I was feeling sick and very tired when suddenly I saw land. I cried with joy. I knew I was finally safe. My good friends, will you tell me the name of this town where I am? You'll know soon. You might not like the place, but you won't be able to choose where to stay. Why do you answer me so roughly? Surely the English do not usually speak to strangers so unkindly. I don't know what the English do, but the Irish hate evil people. You must come with me to Mr. Kerwin, the judge. You must tell him about the murder of the man here last night.